All right, what I want to do in this case is just demonstrate something. I found something in the book of Luke and in the book of Genesis where there's this comparison between numbering going on, and then in a couple of other places. I'm going to bounce around a little bit. Actually, I'm going to use Genesis. I think for this video, I'll just keep it to Genesis, Exodus, and to the book of Luke. I'll make some comparisons between those three. We can go all over. It just gets too big, honestly. That's why it's hard to see. It takes time, and you have to figure it out, and you have to do it in your own brain. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. This is not preaching. This is not supernatural. You're not going to hear anything from me that you have to believe. I'm going to show you something that you can look at and go, oh, I see that for myself. It is not numerology. Please understand that what we're going to do here is something that was accessible to a child 3,500 years ago that had the book of Genesis memorized. They could do something that we're not doing today, and it's simple. For the guy in the last video that said numerology is demonic, I want you to understand something. 3,500 years ago, the little boy or girl counting how many times Noah's name was said in the book of Genesis is not practicing numerology. They're counting. They're counting. Okay, let's go see what's there. Okay, here's the deal in a nutshell again. There's a 3-7 grid that goes all through the Bible. We see those numbers repetitively. People that read the Bible a lot go, how come they keep using the same numbers all throughout the Bible? Not just in one book, in one chapter, and all throughout they keep using the same numbers. There's something to it, and when you analyze it, you find out where it starts. The 3-7 grid starts where? In its simplest form, on the last day of the 7th day of creation, where God rested on the 7th day was said 3 times. 7th day was said 3 times right there, and that's what they're doing to carry the code. They just repeat names, numbers, nouns, verbs. They're repeating them a certain amount of times, and they mean something. Now, if you take those two creation stories that are different, put them side by side, what we learn is that 3 and 7 corresponds to the point in time where we are naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden. 3-7, right there. That's day 7, day 3. Actually, 3 is cause and effect. I won't get into that. It's too much detail. 3-7, and this is a beginning point right here. The Adam and Eve represents us, each person. Creation is the creation of you, not the creation of the world. Okay, that should be kind of evident at some point. That this is that things are much bigger out there than a simple creation in recent times. Okay. However, the story is meaningful. It is a story about myself. It's the story of the creation of each person. And naked and unashamed in the Garden of Eden, Adam represents every human being's consciousness. Eve represents everybody's subconscious, their inner self, their soul, the bundle of memories that you become, that you live through. And at this point in time, 3 and 7, we're happy. We're little children that have not experienced life yet. Then what happens? First sin, which means what? We've just gone off and experienced life. Now, instead of being, I'm so happy, I run around naked, I don't care, everybody's fine, to now, I don't like you, I'm ashamed of that sucks. We become something different. We are no longer at the 3-7 point. Okay, and I need to say there's something that's going to become evident here as we move along. It's not as simple as what I'm saying here. Naked is an analogous term. It does not mean that I take my clothes off and I'm standing there buck naked in front of everybody. What it means is that from the spiritual or from the mental realm, that I am uncovered. If I've got some shame, something to hide, something I'm never telling you, that's a garment right there. It's metaphorically a garment. I've covered something up that I don't want there to be seen. This is going to become very important later as people can't unwrap what naked is. And when we get on the grid and create the number systems, what we're going to find is that naked is repeated the exact amount of times in Genesis to be a good thing. Okay, you go to church. I remember as a kid learning about the flood. You know what? They never went so far as to say naked, that Noah was drunk, got naked, and then his sons had to come and cover him up. They stopped at that point. No, they made it a wonderful story. There's a lot of people that don't even know about that. Yeah, why was Noah naked? Why did his sons cover him up? And why in many churches, do they teach that Ham apparently had some sort of gay sex with his father? And this is Jewish religion. What would be good about that? To me, this has to be interpreted, not worshipped. Seriously, look at it. And I know what I just said here has the potential to offend people. You know what? Here's the deal. What happens when God chooses Abram and Sarai in chapter 12? and puts them in a land of famine after getting everything set up, and then leaves. And what happens? Because there's no food, God put them someplace where there's nothing to eat. Here's your land. Have a nice day. It's all your land. And what do they have to do? They have to go to Egypt to eat. And while there, God's chosen Abram. This is a man and a wife. He thinks his wife is so beautiful that Pharaoh is probably going to want her, and so that they're going to kill him to take her. So he says, you know what, before we even get there, do me a favor and tell everybody that you're my sister so that it'll go well with me. I'll be safe. So that's what they do. They get there. Sure enough, Pharaoh's like, oh, she's beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and marry her. He does. And what does he do? He gives Abram slaves and animals as a result. But then what happens? God finally comes back on the scene. He didn't talk. He doesn't say anything. He just sends plagues to Pharaoh. So Pharaoh has to figure out, oh, these guys lied to me. Why did you say she's my sister? Do you see this story right here? What's going on? Pharaoh then, obviously upset that he was lied to, tells them, he says, take your wife and all of your goods. He's still telling them, you can keep your slaves and animals, but take your wife and get out. And he tells all of his men, let him go, let him go. Who's the good guy in that story? Do you interpret that, or do you worship that? Or do you ignore that? I'm going to interpret it. I'm not going to worship it. I will not worship that. But I'm also not going to ignore it. There's something there. Okay, so if we want to move on to day for sin, we go to 8. Day 8 is sin. Now what we're doing is we're beginning to build a numbering system that we can follow. If it's a 3 and a 7, that's a pure state. If it's an 8, oh, that's after first sin. When does circumcision have to happen? Day 8. Yeah, there's something that's going to begin emerging through here. Circumcision happens because you have now become corrupted in life on the template. This is not a physical thing. The religion is for the people that lay up treasures on earth. If you turn it inward, or if you open the ark, there's something different inside. This becomes a mentally interactive pathway to the inside of your mind and to inner peace and your connection with the higher God that's out there. That is entering the narrow gate. Anyway, what I need to do is work on this numbering system and show it to you. Okay, so there's a couple of things that go on then. So that 3 and 7 is there to represent that point, and then the 8 goes on, and from there it starts. We need more numbers now. We can't just, we see a handful of numbers that repeat throughout the Bible, and 3 and 7s are very much a part of that. However, there's a bigger group as well. However, if we look at those other numbers, they're going to be appearing right here in Genesis as well. 40, for example, 30, 20, 10, 50, 12. Where do we see these? We see them in what are called lineages, but what I recognize them now is an analog farm. If you go to analog, like Adam's analog farm, where that is right there, the Adam's lineage, suddenly there's this group of numbers that are just really whacked out from everywhere. It's like, whoa, that's some strange stuff. People living 940 and 5 years, or 840 and something, and if you look at those, that they're strange. It takes a long time to look at those and figure out what's going on. And what I finally analyze is that the 40 that's appearing within 800 is also a 40 that is appearing down in Sodom. But how do I link them together? In Sodom, righteous is repeated 7 times in this staccato, attention-getting. Would you destroy it for the sake of, if there were 50, would you destroy it for the sake of 50 righteous? No, if there were 50 righteous, I would not destroy it for the sake of 50 righteous. There's a repeating going on that you're like, whoa, how come that's going on like that? Count them. That's meant to get your attention. 800, how many times is it said? 7 times. You take the 40 from where the Sodom farm is, where righteous is repeated 7 times, bring that up, and we confirm it by saying also there's an 800 here that is also repeated 7 times. They're giving that 800 right there as a coded number the role of a 7 to go gather up other numbers. They're creating a larger pool at the 3-7 starting point. Other ways of making sure they're done, they almost look like code, but it's verbal. Like if you're going through the flood story, you're going to see these repeats that are very specific. In 7 days, I will make it rain for 40 days and 40 nights. And in 7 days, it did rain for 40 days and for 40 nights. So the 7 is said once, pointing to the 40 twice. The 7 is said here, pointing to the 40 twice. What's important to know here is that those numbers are the codes. They are the codes. They mean something. 40 does not mean 40 anything. 40 means pure state. It means 3-7. It means this place of healing, of purity. And that's what this template is going to be for. It's a human life cycle template, and it's going to be engaging us in a healing process if we play it out in the mind and know how to interpret it. If not, it's something that's kind of bizarre that we look at. Well, we know what it is. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the numbers that I've, what do you call it? Farmed, mined, something. They're all there. They're here. What is important to know here is that if you had this story memorized, Genesis, that you would have all the knowledge that you needed right there. What right now, I don't know how many times names appear. For example, 17 is one of the numbers gathered up during the flood. What I won't know unless I really have this memorized deep is that when it's time for Sarai to begin, right there at chapter 12, right in the beginning, Sarai's name is also repeated exactly 17 times throughout the book of Genesis. So that tells me that Sarai is a pure female inner portion. We're going to have the same thing with Abram with a 30-some number. At any rate, we're going to see that numbering system become something that if we know that's there, it confirms what is good and what is bad. It's like a cheat code in the background, but we wouldn't know it unless we had it memorized, or like I'm going to do, use the computer memory to search it. That's the only way we can see it. It's lost to us. It's lost to us. And I'll show you what I mean as we go. And throughout the video, when we get to the end, I hope you'll be able to understand that the numbering system is what we're going to be utilizing to help navigate the inner pathway. The outer pathway, you don't even need it. You won't even see it. This is not easy to see. I found it by accident. Okay, I'm going to start by just refreshing a few things right here, remembering that I've got this on my computer here. I'm going to be looking at this through I'm going to be using a navigation function in here to find name repeats. So I've downloaded the entire book of Genesis right here, and what I'll show you is this. Down here is where that grid starts, at the very end of the first creation story. And on the seventh day, God ended the work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all the work which God created and made. So seventh day was said 3 times right there. The 7 is really what we're looking for, not the day. It's the number itself that is the clue. Then that aligns with down here, and they were both naked, and the man and his wife were not ashamed. This, however, represents each of us, and we had no shame. We just were happy in life. Then we went on to have what? The next step is first sin. And then we get punishment, we get cyclical pain, things like that. Okay, so as it goes on down here, if we get down into the Adam analog farm, we see the 800 years, the 900s, and hundreds, all those. We see what they appear with, though. If we treat them like a compound number, you lost it. You can't. You have to treat it like it's a 900 and a 12. And this is a 90, and this is a 800, and this is a 15, and this is a 900, and this is a 5. And this is a 70. And once you do that, things begin emerging in a different way. You will even see things in here like 800 is said 7 times. Mahaleel is said 5 times. Canaan is said 5 times. So there's going to become this really tight repeating network of names repeated specifically a certain amount of times in the background that is incredibly tight. Now, when we get down to okay, here it is down here in the Sodom farm. This is where that goofy numbering thing comes in. Suppose there be 50 righteous within the city. Will you destroy and not spare the whole place? Would you destroy it all and not spare the place for 50 righteous that are there? And then it goes through this. But you'll see that those same numbers, look at the 50, 50, 5, 5, 40, 40, 30, 30, 20, 20, 10, 10 are being repeated. Gather up all of those because they are being repeated in a way where up here, righteous. This is how it hooks in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If we had it memorized, we would know this. We don't. Nobody in church teaches that. They don't even know that. This is why things repeat so much. That's an attention getter. We don't know that. What I have up here is the current collection of numbers. This is not complete. I need to work on this some more. It is very deep. But you can see right here that I've got the Eden. It's this day 7 of first creation coupled with the repeat 3 times and the naked unashamed in the garden, 1 step prior to first sin. And if you notice here, you'll see some numbers. I'm not sure I think there's still some inaccuracies in the lower end. The 2 I'm unsure of. The 3, 5, 7, 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, all of these have just been gathered right there by being repeated. And these are the ones that throughout the rest of the Bible, we're going to see them repeating. We're going to see combinations of them as well. For example, you might see a 30 and a 3 both together. So something's repeated 33 times. You might see a 30 and a 7 or something like that, or a 40 and a 1. Noah's name is repeated exactly 41 times during the flood story. If you read that and you notice, God, they're just hammering on Noah, and then Noah and his sons went in and Noah said, and Noah. It's like, yeah, that's an attention. That's the code right there. The repeats that just hammer your head. Okay, and then what we find is things like, well, throughout Genesis, blessed is repeated 3 times, rested 3 times, bow, rainbow 3 times, bowels 9, 600, nakedness. Nakedness. Naked itself is, I think, 12. Mahalil. Anyway, what we see is we start gathering up names, but they're also repeating numbers a very specific amount of times. And if we continue on, we see that there is a place here where we get into the red zone. 4, I think 4 needs to come off. I'm not sure. There's some things going on I don't have correct. Up here, 8 and on, I have it okay. 8, 11, 13 is one up from 12. 16 is 1 over 15. They're just advancing from a good, if it advances like from a 7 to an 8, it went from pure to sin. And that's what each of these are representing, that exact same step. We're going to see these in here. Wicked is repeated 8 times in Genesis. Creature, 8 times. Thigh, 8 times. Sodom, 21 times. So they're going to, if you have any questions about whether it's a good or a bad thing on the template, then you count how many times it's repeated and compare it to the number list. Okay, now from Genesis, what I want to do here is I'm going to backtrack a little bit. What I've done is I already know that in the book of Luke, when it's time for Jesus to go on his ministry, he is going to be about 30, and he is going to be ready to spend 40 days in the wilderness. But I'm curious about wilderness. Wilderness is repeated exactly 7 times in Genesis. This is telling me right here that no matter what, when wilderness comes up and is used, unless there could be other variations, but right now wilderness being repeated 7 times very specifically tells me that it is a good place to be. It's a pure place. A wilderness, when you're not in the wilderness, you're in a place that's full and raucous. Wilderness is quiet, peaceful. Wilderness is a good thing. All right, I'll bring up the book of Luke, also from the King James Version, the same version. It's critical that when you're doing these number counts, the Bible you pick is very critical. You have to use the King James Version. And let's see here. I'm going to do the same thing. We know that Jesus went into the wilderness. And here in the book of Luke, wilderness is repeated exactly 7 times. So they're maintaining that one so tight that it's like, wow, you didn't even need to do that. But you would have to have these memorized. Who would know that? Who would know that without doing what I'm doing right here? This is known in the background. You know what, though? Let's go somewhere else. I'm going to go to Exodus, the second book of the Bible, and let's see if wilderness is used there and if it's going to match the criteria. All right, Exodus, same King James Version. Only use the King James Version for this searching. The downstream modifications drop this. They don't know that's there. Okay, so if I search for wilderness here, I presume it's good from other places. Now it says 23. It's not 7, but take a look. What we have is a combination of a 20 and a 3. So what I'm going to suggest here is that this is maintained extensively throughout the Bible, that numbering system. That's just a little taste of it right there. That's just kind of a hook in to see how things are. I want to go back and one more time, let's take a look at Genesis and see why Noah being drunk and naked was a good thing, not a bad thing. All right, let's just real quick refresh the story in case anybody hasn't heard it before. Then we'll go ahead and put some analysis to it. And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. So this is right after the flood, and they're just leaving the ark right now. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them the whole earth was overspread. And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunk, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brothers outside. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done to him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brothers. Okay, I'm going to stop right there, and let's just analyze it. First of all, nakedness was said 5 times. That means it's good. It comes from the good thing, okay? The other thing was wine. Wine is repeated 12 times. Wine is on the list. That means those are good. So when we work to interpret these, then we must understand that they're not of the physical world. They're analogous terms that mean something different. If I have bats in my belfry, those are analogous terms that means I've got something wrong upstairs, and some people listening to me might think so. Okay, those are analogous terms, though, that mean something. That's what's happening here. So nakedness does not mean literally naked in the physical world. In the spiritual world, remember back to Adam and Eve, what happened? They got covered after shame, after life experience. What's happening here is that we've just went through a healing process. That flood is a healing process, and now I'm uncovered. The reason the wine, what is that? Wine is a good thing. Wine in the physical world, we know what that is. But in the spiritual world, what is that? Wine gives us a feeling. It changes our feeling. He's got a new feeling on after the flood. He feels better after the flood, and he was uncovered, unashamed. Whatever that was, he's been through a healing process in the flood. Is what that represents. We are Noah. And the sons represent parts of us that are going to continue on. And what happens? There's a part of us that sees we still have other issues. I'm glad I got that resolved. Now I think about it and go, there's something else I've got. So it's going to go on. There's this process of self-healing that we have to have with more shame. Our nakedness, which was good, it was repeated 5 times. We want to be naked in the spiritual world. That means uncovered. I got nothing to hide. You can know everything about me, and so what? Who cares? It's not a bother. That's naked in the spiritual world. If you're there, you feel fine. You feel good. He was feeling good. He was naked, but he got covered back up by his sons. What that means, that represents the idea that there are more issues that we're going to have to resolve. In fact, think it through. Again, this is all playing out in the mind. There are clues in here. The sons turned away because they did not want to see the nakedness of their father. There are parts of us that are hurt, that even though you've resolved something, they don't feel better. They're still going to need to be resolved. So the story is very cleverly teaching us something at a much deeper level, but we have to analyze it. I will interpret it that way and use the numbers right there that help illustrate what that is. That numbering grid in the background is going to fall in line with pretty much all of the nouns and verbs that I can see. If you go through, it's mind-boggling how tight it is. We don't see it on the outside. You only see it on the inside. And that means, what I mean is up here in your mind as you're going through and you're understanding that this is a personal path, that's what this is. It's not a historical path looking outward. It's something about me. And that Abram and Sarai story down there, what is that? That represents me again at a beginning. It's a new place. It's an inner self and a conscious, like the Adam and Eve, starting out in a place where there's a famine, like in the garden. You hadn't consumed of anything yet. And then when you do, you consume of something that is bad. What happened? There was nothing there. They go and they consume. That represents the idea that I am moving on in life, or you or any of us are going on in life, and our inner self is being corrupted by life experiences. And then plagues represent the idea that now we've got this cyclical pain occurring as a result, and it's time to leave the past behind. And the story's going to continue that way, and that's the only way it's going to make sense without it being some sort of a, ooh, you did what with your wife? Kind of a story. And you want me to worship you? I'm sorry, what now? Yeah, you have to get out of that stuff. When you really look at the Bible, it's a tough thing, honestly. I don't know. Whew. All right, I won't even go there. Does it by any chance make sense that in the beginning of Job that he had 7 sons and 3 daughters? The 7 and the 3 right there, male and female. Do you see that pattern? It's a hidden pattern. It's a conceptual pattern. It's not the literal pattern. But if you look, you go, why? Why do those numbers keep popping up there? That many, and male, female in the beginning. Yep, there you go. That's the start. That's replicating the start of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden in many different ways without ever really showing it from the outside. You only see it by counting numbers. It's hidden. We've lost it. What else do I want to say here? I think that's it. It was just really to kind of show how that numbering system continues to align and how you use it to see what is good or bad once you're interpreting it at the level of template. And you realize what's happening here is a cyclical self-healing path played out inward, not a historical path that makes you go, how did people live 950 years, 12 years? That's not a number. But there's so many weird things in the Bible. You got to go, okay, there's something not right here. We need to analyze it, what's going on. But the numbering system is the clue, and the numbering system is not magical. It's right there. We can see it. What you can see now is that we don't know it well enough. We don't have it memorized at the level that they would have had it memorized. Not only do they have the whole story memorized, but how many times nouns and verbs are repeated. That sounds complicated, but think about it. Think if your life is simple. I'm not an auto mechanic. But I've done a lot of work on my cars in the past, and I've known people that were like, okay, yep, this car needs these many lug nuts. This is the size of the headers on this one. It takes 12 of those on each one. They know all that stuff by heart, and you're like, how do you know that stuff? Just by working with it. You don't just know it's a car with parts. You know how many parts there are. A simpler explanation would be like, twinkle, 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 little star, how I wonder what you are up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Got to memorize. Okay, how many times was twinkle said? Oh. How about star? You have to start thinking. Then they're doing it at a very deep level right there in a big document. We're carrying a Bible, reading stories, thinking we got something. This is really deep. That's why we don't gain access to it. You can see here that, wow, that's really buried. But it's there. If you downloaded and started looking on your own, it would stagger you. It's mind-boggling what's there. Anyway, all right. Hope the video was fun and interesting. I just wanted to do that. I was finding that stuff in Luke, playing with a couple of things here. That Luke. Jesus was what, 12? One of our numbers there. When at the temple, it was about 30 when he starts his ministry. He goes into the desert for 40 something after baptismal. What do we have in Exodus? We have the Israelites spending 40 years in the desert after crossing the Red Sea, the water crossing. There's patterns in here we're not seeing because we don't read them conceptually. We read them historically, or we deny them all out of hand completely, when in all reality, there is something in here for the person who enters the narrow gate with it. If you know what that means. All right. Hope the video was fun and interesting and informative. And I don't know what anybody's going to do about it. It is what it is. I can keep showing this, but that's all I can do. All right. I'm going to make another video for a friend of mine about some occultic stuff here he just asked me about. So it'd be a fun side break here. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth, if you're interested. Okay, that'll be the next video. Take care. See you in that one. Oh, comments, questions, feel free to put them below. Thanks. See you in the next video.